You are listening to the Overthinker's Guide to Joy, episode 24. This is the one where we're going to talk about everything you need to know about what sugar is doing to your body. Let's dive in. Hey there, you are listening to the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overachievers, perfectionists, type A, stressed out, anxious people who just want to calm down and feel better. I'm your host, Certified Life Coach Jackie DeCrenis. Hey there, how are you guys? So last week, I was talking all about how comfort eating might be interfering with your weight loss goals. And comfort eating or emotional eating being a habit, and probably something you started when you were little, a learned behavior from a caregiver or a family member. And somewhere the messaging about managing your emotions with food was a good idea. But as we get older, we realize not so much. The emotions behind overeating, absent-mindedly eating, or needing to comfort ourselves by eating is only one part of the equation, though, to sabotaging your weight loss goals. So I wanted to dedicate another episode on this subject and get a little bit more specific. It's not just eating that's getting in your way of weight loss or feeling empowered or feeling like you have control of your bodies. It's what you're eating that might be preventing you from losing weight or keeping it off. Now, look, it's no secret that sugars and starches are the primary culprits of the weight battle. But sugars and starches don't just wreak havoc on weight loss, and that's why I want to talk about it today. I want to talk about the role sugar and starches play on our bodies. And scientific studies have, over the last 10, 20, and 30 years have shown that sugars and starches have a chemical addiction, which is why the emotional eating component I talked about last week may also have a chemical component to what's going on with why can't I lose weight? Why can't I stick to a program? Why can't I do this? And the chemical addiction is not that different than caffeine, alcohol, or drugs. Sugar, when we put it in our bodies, lights up our brain like a Christmas tree. We get a big dopamine hit from sugar, like any drug. And like any drug, the more we do, the more we want, because you kind of build up a tolerance to it. So you know how when you were little, a little bit of sugar was fine, and then suddenly you needed more and more and more, and then ultimately you become sort of desensitized to how much sugar you're eating. You don't even know how sweet our food is. So, for example, if you've ever given up sugar for a week or two, you'll be unbelievably surprised how sweet a piece of fresh fruit tastes. Whereas if you're eating a lot of highly processed food or a lot of food that has sugar in it, you're probably not that interested in fresh fruit. There is almost no learning curve to learn to like things that are slightly sweet. If you've ever seen a baby take their first bite of pureed pears or applesauce, they get this huge smile across their face. It's not the same for when they take their first bite of pureed broccoli or pureed lamb or chicken. So sweet is just something that our palate needs almost no introduction to immediately like. And look, sugar is in everything. It's not just in cakes and cookies, candies, and ice cream. It's in muffins, breads, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, ketchup. And there are natural sugars like maple syrup and honey, which are slightly better than the refined ones like white sugar, fructose, high fructose corn syrup being one of the worst. Now, these highly processed simple sugars put a huge demand on our bodies, specifically on our organs. Sugar is not just empty calories, but it's been linked to inflammation. And inflammation seems to be one of the biggest culprits in autoimmune diseases, age-related diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and various forms of cancer. And you don't need to eat candy or be drinking soda to be consuming a lot of sugar. Our bodies turn starches into sugar almost at the same rate those sweet foods do. Starches like breads and pastas, crackers, baked goods. they may be the greater cause of heart disease rather than the traditional beliefs that fats and cholesterol-laden foods were the cause. So scientists are changing their tune on that and seeing that a lifestyle that has a lower carbohydrate sugar intake may be better for heart health. So I'm a huge sushi lover, and I was sad to find out that even sushi, which is literally one of my favorite foods, has a ton of sugar in it. Not the fish, not the vegetables, not the seaweed, but the sushi rice is made with sugar and salt. Most sushi rolls have 11 to 15 grams of sugar in them. That's 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So if you're having 3 California rolls or 3 spicy tuna rolls, you might be having the same amount of sugar that's in a can of Coca-Cola. Now, obviously, if you're just having sashimi, that's just the fish, and plain rice, not sushi rice, which is still high in carbs, at least you're not having that sugar added. But the issue isn't just the extra calories from the sugar. The real issue is the flood of insulin that is required by our bodies to manage the sugars we're taking in. This is why so often after we eat, we're exhausted. The body has to work so hard to process that flood of chemicals. This is why people crave something sweet after a huge meal. They're tired and they're looking for something to keep the party going. When we eat less sugar and less simple carbs, we balance out our blood sugars so that you don't get those spikes and crashes. And when we eat more complex carbohydrates, like cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, and proteins like lean meats, nuts, eggs, cheese, we give the body what it needs. But avoiding the sugar spikes and crashes does something else for our body. It prevents that feeling of an emotional roller coaster. This is why so many people turn to sweets when they're feeling sad, lonely, or bored. They're looking for a pick-me-up. But that pick-me-up, that candy, that ice cream, that cookie, it's only temporary. And it's guaranteed to be followed by another crash. And then more cravings for starches and sugars. So you see, it's like a vicious cycle. And it puts us on a path of not just weight loss sabotage, but also an emotional roller coaster of highs and lows. And our bodies are then inflamed, achy, our immune system is compromised, and all of this leads to us feeling less well, emotionally, physically, and mentally. When we eat whole foods, proteins, vegetables, berries, and whole fruits in moderation, we see a change in our organs. They become healthier. We have more energy. We have better self-esteem. We have more motivation to practice other healthier habits like exercise, meditation, other forms of self-care. Now, the mistake we made in the 80s when we heard sugar was bad the first round was everything went sugar-free. Cookie companies, soda companies, and pretty much everyone couldn't wait to jump on the bandwagon and advertise how their products were sugar-free. But over the last 40 years, we learned that artificial sweeteners are not a viable substitute for the human body. Saccharin was associated with cancer. That's like Sweet and Low, and there's other brand names. Aspartame was linked to behavioral and cognitive issues. People who were eating artificial sweeteners were sending signals to their brains that something sweet was coming. But when there was no substance to follow, the body would crave more and more food to satisfy the promise, thus resulting in people gaining more and more weight. So artificial sweeteners is not the answer. The trick is to eliminate sugars and processed foods. And ideally, what you want to do is do it for 7 days minimum, and then see how you feel. By eating protein, vegetables, and healthy fats, that's olive oil, avocado, nuts, and seeds, you will end up stabilizing your blood sugar, reducing your inflammation, reducing your cravings, reducing your insulin production, and keeping you feeling more emotionally stable, which means less anxiety, less emotional roller coaster, clearer thinking, and more self-confidence. Now, I eat a very healthy diet, but I find myself sort of allowing sugars and even gluten-free starches to creep back into my diet. And before I know it, I feel the difference in my body. It shows up on my scale, in my sleep patterns, and especially in my own anxiety and my overthinking brain. Because when my blood sugar drops from eating starches and sugars, then that's when I get that kind of anxiety roller coaster. And just this past week, I did another cleanse where I took all the sugars and all the starches out of my diet, and I am feeling so good. So if you're feeling like you want to take some control back into your health and your emotions, I highly recommend taking a hiatus from sugar and starches for just 1 week and seeing what happens. I think you're going to love it. All right, that's it for today. I'm wishing you a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now. If you want to learn more tips about managing your stress and how to manage your overthinking brain, just go to my website and sign up for my weekly newsletter at JackieDecrenis.com. That's JackieDecrenis.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Jackie Decrenis. Thank you for listening to this episode of Overthinker's Guide to Joy. If you like what was offered in today's episode, I would love you to leave a review and subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts.